Hello, and welcome to Women in Business, where we interview entrepreneurs and senior managers and show you the strengths, successes, obstacles, and roadblocks women experience in business. Since I believe every person in business needs to be visible, I'd like to invite you to watch www.sob6, that's the number 6, tips.com, which will give you some valuable information should you get the call to be on radio or TV, which I think is extremely important. If you'd like to contact me personally, drop me a line at Gayle Carson, that's Gayle, Gayle Carson 13 at gmail.com, or go to my website, www.spunkyoldbroad.com, and sign up for my weekly newsletter. My guest today is Jennifer Ransaw Smith. She's a nationally recognized personal elevation architect, leadership development mentor, and personal brand strategist. She specializes in igniting the visibility, credibility, and profitability of professional women executives and entrepreneurs. Her mission is to empower her clients to define themselves before others do it for them. She's the founder of the Personal Elevation Lab, a boutique consultancy specifically designed to leverage the skills, talents, and expertise of professional women who are ready to make a name for themselves within their organization and industry, and the undeniably fierce movement, a soon-to-be global movement, that challenges women reinvent how they are currently living and uplevel all areas of their life. Her personal branding and elevation tips, tools, and strategies have appeared in numerous publications, national radio and television, and she divides her time between consulting, speaking, training, and coaching clients on how to become the person to know in their industry. Welcome, Jennifer.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So you're well known for your personal branding. So why don't you tell us what it means? Now, you know that I'm known as Dr. Gayle SOB, Spunky Old Broad. That's definitely a brand. And I've got it all trademarked and everything. So how do you define personal branding?
In a nutshell, in less than 5 words, it really is just your reputation. What people are saying behind your back, what you're known for. And so without getting too convoluted, there are a million different ways, but every single person, it boils down to every single person has a brand and every person has a reputation. But really, most people, the majority of people are not intentional about the brand that they're putting out and being consistent with it.
Well, I think that's true. I think a lot of people don't know how to describe themselves, and sometimes they get too wordy, But you mentioned something that's very, very important, yet I think dangerous in a way, and that is asking people what they think of you. What do they think of you when your name is brought up or your company is brought up? And boy, do you learn a lot with something like that. And sometimes you like it, and sometimes you don't.
And that goes back to what you were saying about the first thing that you said is so many people don't know how to describe themselves. I like to say if you cannot clearly articulate who you are, what you do, and what separates you from your peers, then other people cannot do it for you. And what often happens is within our lives is if you go to 4 or 5 people within your circle of influence, so we might go to people who are your colleagues, we might go to people who are your clients, if you're a mom or a father, and we go to people who are in the PTA, every person, every group has a different way of looking at you. And what we want to do is make sure that you're intentional about what you're putting out and how you're positioning yourself within your world.
Absolutely. Right. And so I've got to ask you, and I think I know the answer, but I want to hear your answer. What are the benefits to building a strong personal brand?
Well, first of all, it's absolutely immense. We'll start all the way at the top, and one that people think of is the most important. People are willing to pay for the best of the best. And so when you look at how many people, I like to say it does you no good to be your industry's best kept secret. You look at how many people have spent so many years getting the education, putting the hours in, the 10,000 hours, building case studies and getting testimonials, that they've never really requested, all these things. And you have no one who knows who you are outside of the four walls of your organization. Or, if you're a small business without, outside the little confines of the 5 miles where you live. And so the benefit, when you talk about being visible, and we live in a technologically savvy world, the first thing that every single person does, whether we're looking for a book, whether we're looking for a movie, whether we're looking for the next best show on Broadway, everyone looks at Yelp, everyone looks at Google. And so Google has pretty much become everyone's best friend. And when you look at the way that you interact with the world and how the moment you hear about someone or the moment you see something on television, you're pulling out your phone and you're looking it up, we assume that people are not doing that about us. So the first thing when we're talking about building a brand is you're able to command a lot more. You don't have to come in and try to negotiate. You don't have to come in and try to explain to people what your value is, because your reputation speaks for itself.
So
you attract higher level. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you, is there any industry where it isn't relevant?
There are a lot of industries where it's not relevant. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, and I actually take that back. High visibility is not relevant in every industry. In the Washington, D.C. area, if you work for the government, if you have high clearance, I've had a lot of clients on Capitol Hill. That's not something that you're trying to do. But that does not mean that you don't build a fierce personal brand. Your brand might then be, let me really build my reputation and my circle of influence so that I'm connecting with the right people, so that if I'm looking for another opportunity, that my reputation starts speaking for itself. Let me not build my brand that way, but let me, maybe if we have industry publications or if we have, private client conferences, let me be the one who's getting on the stage and writing about that or writing articles. So it doesn't have to be standing there with neon lights saying, oh my God, look at me, because every industry is different. And a lot of attorneys, people who are in legal field, are not online that way. But it is understanding your industry and then understanding the best way to leverage and what visibility means. It might not be visibility in the traditional sense for some in academia. It's more credibility. Am I writing for this? How many times am I getting published and that kind of thing. So it's really understanding your industry and how the value of that particular industry in the way that you're going to move forward. But when we talk about the entire in totality, what I like to say is that your job is to be the chief marketing officer of your personal brand. And that means taking the time to understand the nuances of your industry, understand what it is that's going to separate you from everyone else. And if you are in an industry or like the rest of us, 80% of the people, it's not going to do you any good to fly under the radar because your competition is not.
It's funny. I was almost going to ask you about the personal branding of what's going on now in Washington, but I will keep that off of our broadcast here. So,
I mean, without speaking on it, and we can just like hit the periphery. What I will say is that if there is ever any doubt of the power of personal branding, all you have to do is turn towards Washington.
Well, that's true.
And it doesn't matter where you fall. The fact of the matter is there are a lot of people. I just turned 50 last year, a couple months ago. And there are a lot of people who are my age who are kicking and screaming about that's just something I'm not interested in, and I like to give the example of, 15, 20 years ago when I first moved to the DC area and got married, my husband and I, like millions of other people, could not wait until every single Friday night when we were like everyone else in line to go grab a movie, a DVD. From where? Where were we going?
Probably Blockbusters.
Exactly. Make it a Blockbuster night. And, at the time, Blockbuster was a leader within their industry, bar none. I mean, you had Blockbuster and you had mom and pop places that you rented from. And when people started having conversations with the powers that be within the organization saying there's new technology coming out, New things that you need to be paying attention to, Blockbuster, and these are case studies that are like known. They were not interested because we're number one. No one is going to, we're not even talking about streaming. Blockbuster actually was kneecapped by the idea that people wanted to go and get their steaks and their wine and rent a movie at the grocery store with the red box. But when the idea was first, proposed, they were not even interested in that, Blockbuster. And so look what happened. All of a sudden, our local Blockbuster has been turned into a painting place. So the idea is the reason I brought that up is that a lot of times when you are older and seasoned and educated, there are things that you think that you're too good for or you're not interested in. But when it comes to the swiftness that technology is taking over, you don't have a choice. You do not have a choice but to, if you're really trying to be a player and you're a professional and you're trying to stay relevant, to show that your finger is on the pulse of the changing technology, to show that you understand LinkedIn and the importance of getting on and connecting with other people and making sure that your profile appropriately and strategically positions you as someone who is an expert in your industry, and that you understand how to leverage the technology. But your brand is not just about technology. It's just understanding that, if I am the best and the best within my particular area, what would that look like? Would I be writing for industry publications? Would I be speaking at conferences? Would I be penning a book about my particular niche area? Would I be able to confidently walk into a room and tell you the value that you would get if I were on your team, if I were in your organization, or if I were a hired, client of yours when you're doing business with me? And so many people are not really clear. They cannot tell you, what it is that really makes them game changing. And that ends up costing them money, opportunities, and everything else in the long run.
Well, that kind of brings me to my next question, which is, as we're moving into a new decade, it's 2020, what is happening to personal branding? I mean, how is it evolving?
Podcasting is one way in the last couple of years that you start to see that people are really taking seriously the fact that there are avenues, and I don't have to wait to be anointed to have an opinion. Where a long time ago, it was something that, only the select few were able to get an opportunity to do like you're doing and have a radio program or to have a podcast or to have a voice. A lot of people have learned how to strategically leverage social media in ways that catapult their visibility. I mean, you have people who have literally built their entire brand on something like Twitter, simply because they're smart and they're savvy and they're able to articulate and distill their ideas in, short sound bites. And so what I want people to recognize is if I were to, or one of us were to pull your name up on Google, would you show up like someone who is dominating within your area of expertise? And that could be in any town. Are you visible? If someone were not calling you within their industry, but they were looking for somebody who had your expertise, who else would they be calling?
Well, it's interesting because, as we change and, you talk about seasoned industries, and it's funny because Wayne Huizinga, who was the originator of Blockbusters, sold it right before it collapsed. I mean, he was a very smart businessman, and he was in South Florida, so I knew about him very well. He served on a board that I was on, and he got out just at the right time, and the people who bought it did not change things. So what,
yes.
What do I, as a business owner, need to get in place to build my brand?
Okay, so let's just start with a couple of the basic kinds of things. If I were to say, 5 things that a person should have in place, I definitely think that we need to be savvy about making sure that we have professional, expert profile pictures across social media that represent, what it is that you're trying to convey to your audience. That a lot of times people grab a picture and they'll keep it up there for a long time, 10 years later, 8 years later. But what you want to start doing is showing that you're somebody who is relevant. And so you don't have to have new headshots done every single year, but they should be professional. But every 2 to 3 years, you should be updating them. You should be updating your profile on LinkedIn. This is a platform that professional people dominate and that they're on. And I think that every professional person should have a fantastic profile on there. You should start getting to the place where you feel comfortable going back and actively asking people as we start moving forward, can I have, if I'm engaging with you, whether we're engaging on a project, whether you are a client, if a person is pleased with what you're doing, then you need to start actively asking for testimonials and recommendations, and being able to leverage case studies. The fact of the matter is, we love second-party endorsements. And if you're looking at, just give an example, you're going to a restaurant or you're going to watch a movie and one person has reviewed it, then chances are a lot of times you might skip it. But when you see 5,000 people, and so the same things, the same kind of way that we navigate through the world is how we need to be approaching the way that we're positioned out. We need to just, on a regular basis, put our name in Google alerts. And if people are not familiar, you type in Google and the word alert, there is an alerting system that is actually free. And Google will send you, every time someone mentions your name, they'll send you a download. But not only just your name, but we need to start having people who understand their industry and what it means to be a force within their industry. So you're keeping your finger and your pulse on other things that are going on that are relevant that you can start leveraging and commenting on. The fact of the matter is, what we're trying to do is, you're in a world where it is very easy to get lost. And it's, chaotic and it's loud and everyone has voices
and constantly
and what we want to do.
Constantly.
It's constant. It is. And I am a wholehearted believer that, when you don't have to try to compete with everyone else, but what it is every single person has their thing, their it factor. And you're not trying to sell to the world, but what you are trying to do is make yourself easy to be found by those who need the services that you have. And you want to present in a professional way.
That's the key, and of course, we're not talking about huge corporations that have millions of dollars to spend, because they may not care if you kind of peek behind the curtain. But if you're a small, individual, or a small, under 50 people firm, what if you're not comfortable sharing too much about yourself? Or,
then I would pivot. You don't have to share about yourself. But what I will say, let me give you a quick, a 45-second story. I spoke at a organization, a billion-dollar company, about 6 or 7 years ago. And this has been the best testament that has ever happened to me, that really signifies the importance of not putting yourself second. And I spoke to some senior executives, and then I spoke to some mid-level executives. One of their SVPs came up to me at the end and said, "Oh my God, it's really time for me to start working on my brand. I'm going to follow up and give you a call." She did. And she called me and said she was in Vegas. She called me subsequently, probably every other month, and said, "I want to stay on your radar. I am extremely busy right now." They ended up about 2 months later losing a $1 billion account. And she called me about a month later and said that she was shocked because they let her boss go. Then she called me and said she went from 176 direct reports to 14. So by this time, she's joking, because I spoke in February and we've gotten all the way to like October. And she said, now clearly I need to start working on my brand. And she was let go around Christmas time. When she was let go, what she found herself doing was looking for a job like somebody who had just gotten out of college. She's sitting there and she's just going through, Google and that kind of thing. And one of the things that was so important is she found out she was, what a lot of people do, she spent her entire career building her organization's brand and nobody knew who she was. And so all of a sudden you start feeling desperate. All of a sudden you're out of work. And she had a great package. She had 6 months. But all of a sudden, in 3 months, it starts hitting your self-esteem and you're like, I'll take anything. And then you end up going into something you don't want to do. And that's the thing that so many of us do. We're in our organization, head down. We're great worker bees. We're doing what's asked of us, but we never in long term thinking about ourselves. And so if you're going to be uplifting an organization's brand or a small company's brand, just make sure that you're really clear about your value, what you're bringing, and how you can strategically position yourself. So if ever the rug is pulled out or anything ever happens, or someone's just looking for someone who is a dominating force, that it's easy to find you and you're not all of a sudden like, oh my God, I cannot believe I've dedicated my entire life to helping others. And now what the heck do I do?
Yeah, that is so important. That's a great example. So what would you say are the top branding resources you'd recommend?
YouTube is number one for every single industry. I think that anything that you want to learn, down to straight up the elevator pitch. When you were saying a lot of people don't know, that is, I would say 90% of the people that I get cannot clearly articulate themselves in a way that is magnetic, that would make me lean in and say, tell me more. That's the problem. And so, whether you're going to National Speakers Association, which is a leading speaking group, and listening to professional speakers and looking at that, or joining a Toastmaster, understanding you don't have to love public speaking, but the ability to sell yourself from a stage, and I don't mean sell yourself like, you have products and services, that kind of thing. Sell your ideas, the ability to get in front of stakeholders, the ability to stand in front of a new client and effortlessly be able to articulate your ideas in such a way that that person is like, you need to be on my team, is a skill, is a thing that very few people are just born with. A lot of people who have it naturally have been practicing for a long time. And it does not matter if you're a neurophysicist, if you're a brain surgeon, if you're an author, whatever area you're in, you still need to be able to sell yourself. So I would say, like, making that a priority to really start practicing, whether you go to an NSA, whether you go to a Toastmaster, or whether you hire a one-on-one coach, or you go on YouTube and you start, getting assignments and just practicing in your car when you're driving. Another thing that I would say is when I say turning to YouTube and turning to podcasting. Technology now in every single industry, whatever you're looking to learn how to do, is out there. And so much of it is out there for free. And I think a lot of people don't take advantage of it in that regard. It's more of a bystander. And if I would say anything, that if we're moving in 2020, I would challenge everybody who's listening to spend less time being a consumer and more time being a creator.
Very good. Excellent.
Yeah.
And I know
content is king.
It's funny. I'm a NSA member. I'll be going to my 40th convention this summer. So I believe in all of the things we're talking about. But you have a gift for our audience, Jennifer, which I think is a manifesto. So tell our listeners how to get it, where they can find you, and what it's all about.
I wrote a manifesto probably about 3 or 4 years ago, because I was finding that I had so many clients who were incredibly talented, but they didn't see it themselves. I had clients who had double Ivy Leagues, and they were still like riddled with self-doubt. So I wrote this manifesto and sent it to a couple clients, and then I ended up speaking about it one time. And so I absolutely have it. And let me read it to you real quick.
Okay, because we just got about a minute and a half left. That's all we've got.
Okay.
And I want them to know where to find you.
You can find me at, it'll make it easier, personalelevation.com. Personalelevation.com. And for my manifesto, what you can do is, if you look on what you can do is just drop me an email at Jennifer@personalelevation.com, and I will make sure my assistant will send you one. or I sent you a copy and they can go to your show notes probably and download one.
Okay, so if you go to Jennifer at personalelevation.com, you will find her manifesto. Yes. Download it. I think it'll be good for your psyche. It'll be good for who you are, and you'll understand why it's important to have a personal brand. And
yes.
Wow, this has been terrific, Jennifer. I think it's wonderful that you're out there helping small business. They really need it. It's not going to get any easier for them. The more tools they have, the more complicated it gets, and the more people enter and the more competition there is. But good competition always wins out. So that's the important thing. So if you want to reach Jennifer, remember, personalelevation.com. You want the manifesto, go to Jennifer, Jennifer, at personalelevation.com. Thank you so much for being with us, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.
Hi, this is Dr. Gayle, and I wanted you to know I have a whole bunch of other things to offer you. If you go to spunkyoldbroad.com, you will see an array of SOB stuff for sale and all our latest products and additions. If you're interested in getting on TV, I have a brand new course, Get on TV. And if you want to start your own business, you'll want my SOB Guide to Business Success. I know you'll love them all. I guarantee it.
Thanks for listening to Women in Business. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And if you have any suggestions as to who you'd like me to have as a guest, just email me at GayleCarson13@gmail.com. Be sure to check out www.sob6tips.com. And in the meantime, go to www.spunkyoldbroad.com to see the resources I have for you.